For those following the stop and frisk case underway in Manhattan, this was a day to circle on the calendar. The highest-ranking NYPD official to appear in the trial, retired Chief of Department Richard Esposito, took the stand today and made news doing it on the defensive, admitting the NYPD hasn't done its best keeping track of who's being stopped and why. But he also noted that issue number one for the department is keeping crime low. Let's get the latest now from the federal courthouse in Lower Manhattan. Our own Dominic Carter is there reporting live. Good evening, Dominic.
Well, good evening to you, Andrew. And Esposito, the chief of department, basically a rock star down here at the courthouse. But Andrew, he did find himself, he defended the department, but he also found himself on the defensive under questioning from the plaintiff's lawyers as it relates to stop and frisk in the NYPD. Over and over and over, Esposito was asked about productivity. Does that amount to quotas? That's been the argument that has taken place for years. Esposito said the bottom line is to keep crime down. In his words, Andrew, his stats, 40% drop over the last 12 years. But as far as Esposito being on the defensive, it's the words of his subordinates that came back to haunt him. Commanding officers caught on wiretaps by whistleblowers, in which Esposito was asked in one question, referring to Bedford-Stuyvesant, Brooklyn, do you think it's okay to say everybody has a warrant? Esposito was forced to say no. Next question, do you think it's okay to say where a police commander said, we own the streets? Esposito said no. Here's what one of the plaintiff lawyers said outside the courtroom. From your point of view, how did today go?
Well, I think he's obviously a very important witness for us because he illustrates why there's a problem in the police department. And I don't think it's because he's an evil person or a bad guy. In fact, I like him, but he just doesn't take this problem seriously. He's very cavalier in his approach to, being able to document this kind of activity. He himself said, even though the regulation after regulation says you got to document your stop and frisk activity in a memo book, that he doesn't think it's necessary or mandated in the face of the regulations that say it is. So that's not coming from a sergeant or a lieutenant or a precinct commander, or that's the chief of the department. So if that's the attitude of the chief of the department, imagine what they do on the street. So it's very troubling that he would do that.
Esposito is important because the police commissioner, Ray Kelly, will not be testifying at this trial. Now remember, Andrew, Esposito was the guy that ran a lot of these CompStat sessions where they pull in police brass from the different precincts and they rake them over the coals for any increase in crime, any parameters that show that things are out of whack. And here's what Esposito said. He said that his job is to make sure that officers are giving us an honest day of work for an honest day of pay. Is crime going down? He was also asked, Andrew, why did he retire? He said for the chief of department, the mandatory retirement age is 63, which is what he is at. And Esposito will be facing more questions tomorrow morning. That is it from Lower Manhattan. I'm Dominic Carter. Andrew, let's go back to you.
Dominic, I'm curious real quickly, any reaction from the judge about some of the problems the department had with its record keeping? Did you get a sense of how that might impact the eventual disposition of this case?
Excellent question. One for the audience to keep in mind, there is no jury. So there's no where the lawyers normally play to the jury. Judge Scheinlin will be the sole decider in this case. And she is playing it, Andrew, very close to the vest. I'm glad you asked that question because there are a couple of things that I can point out here. She wants to keep this case moving. She wants it over and done with by May. So in other words, normally we would take a break about 3:30 to 3:45. No more breaks the last couple of days. And the judge has indicated that's the way it's going to be. She wants to move full steam ahead, but we have no indication of which way she may be leaning, Andrew.
All right, Dominic Carter reporting live for us in Lower Manhattan tonight. Dominic, nice work. Thank you very much. Evan, very quickly, for a lot of people who live in the suburbs, this is just a theoretical case, but you're dealing with races in the city, and I mean campaign races in the city, where this is a big deal.
Yeah, I have two candidates that are running borough-wide in Brooklyn. When you go into these neighborhoods where stop and frisk is so prevalent, It is the #2 issue in that neighborhood, just below economy. For some people, it's the #1 issue because everyone has a story about themselves or a family member or a friend being stopped and frisked, and they find it humiliating, and it is hurting community relationships with the police. And that's the worst part, because the police need the community to police effectively.
All right, we're going to take a quick break. More RFL right after this. Stay with us.